So as we continue this conversation around gender, we will be still talking about cis people, of course, because they experience gender. Today's heavily going to be focused on LGBTQIA people who also live within the binary, as like trans binary people exist. We'll also be having conversations about intersex people and gender fluid people. And as you guys know, I've been on a gender deconstruction journey myself, and I want to talk about that a little bit, but not really. I just want to incorporate it into the conversation because, you know, yesterday on stream, I had this realization that I used this word gender fluid, and then some of the people in the chat were like, oh, wait, is Brittany? And, you know, I really recently saw D'Angelo Wallace kind of like come out on their stream, and something about coming out feels very strange. I think in this 2026, in a sense, where I like D'Angelo didn't make a coming out video. They just showed up on stream and was like, what is, who is? And they had a really insightful perspective on gender that I thought was like really, really just like resonated with me so deeply. So we're going to talk a lot about that today and understand that ultimately gender is such a personal experience. And so when we try to externalize it out, which society does, it builds, you know, social structures and money structures, and, you know, a lot of ways of discrimination are used through gender. So, you know, when we talk about gender, remember that it is so many things. It is political, it is social, it is internal, it is external. And so I want to start it off today's stream with just like a little 2-minute clip by Bell Hooks, just to give us a grounding of our intention today. So just check this out.
I began to use the phrase in my work, white supremacist capitalist patriarchy, because I wanted to have some language that would actually remind us continually of the interlocking systems of domination that define our reality, and not to just have one thing be like, you know, gender is the important issue, race is the important issue. But for me, the use of that particular jargonistic phrase was a sort of shortcut way of saying all of these things actually are functioning simultaneously at all times in our lives. And that if I really want to understand what's happening to me right now at this moment in my life as a Black female of a certain age group, I won't be able to understand it if I'm only looking through the lens of race. I won't be able to understand it if I'm only looking through the lens of gender. I won't be able to understand it if I'm only looking at how white people see me. I mean, one of the
So pause right there. So obviously intersectionality was created by Kimberly Crenshaw, and Bell Hooks says it so perfectly here, that this idea that we can't just look at it through one lens. We have to understand that it's a matter of overlap. And so, I guess that was a minute-long video, but I want to show you some comments I got yesterday on stream to incorporate them into today's topic. So, here's the first one. Is it vacuous to focus on beauty to this degree? And I said, beauty is political, social. I believe it's very important to understand it for personal, societal, and planet growth. Beauty isn't shallow. It's not vacuous. It's not casual. You know, yesterday, I got other follow-up questions about the topic. So let me explain it. This person said, hi, Brittany, bit of a ramble. I'm just going to read the first half. But enjoying your content, sometimes I lose thread of why we're having the conversation. And I feel like I'm missing something that's part of the fun. I love that. The whole beauty conversation is interesting. I didn't quite grasp why categorizing people is important to do once we've deconstructed beauty standards. I get why it can be fun, but I'm not sure I get why it matters beyond that. If it does, maybe I misunderstood. Is it because it is a good personal test on whether you've deconstructed? Was that the point? Okay. Deconstruction, in my mind, is not to eradicate beauty or ugliness from the world, but to understand the depth and intimacy of the relationship too, right? Great question, important question, right? When we ask this question about what is beauty, when we say let's deconstruct we could say white beauty standards, but let's just say the beauty standard, it is not to then erase beauty, because beauty is to be experienced. It is not to erase ugliness. Ugliness is to be experienced. And so I think what sometimes happens in these conversations is we hear deconstruction and we hear erase. Deconstruction, live without. We do not need to live without beauty. We need to live without the standard that says beautiful is morally good. Beautiful only looks white. Beautiful only looks thin. We are not, deconstructing to erase beauty from our life. So when we sit there and after the fact, we deconstruct beauty, we can then still have a conversation about what is beautiful. It's just not predicated on that beauty standard that has been very deeply harmful to many of us for very long. That's the point. Does that kind of help clarify that? You guys can let me know. This chat or this comment also says, might be too dumb or just misunderstanding, but this beauty conversation is really losing me. What does it mean when Brittany says on Brittany's scale, Jennifer Aniston would be a 12, but when comparing her to the most beautiful person, she's a 7? Most beautiful person to who? If the answer is Brittany, then how would that demote her 5 points? If the answer is something else, I'm curious what standard this is reaching from, because it doesn't seem like she's alleging there's some objective top ranking of the most attractive people out there. So obviously, there isn't one singular person that is truly the most beautiful person, as there's like billions of people, and many of which we do not have access to literally seeing them. Brittany's scale is my personal attraction scale, what I find beautiful. And then sort of like this idea. So what we do is we create a mythos, like a mythical creature of beauty in which this standard must exist on the planet, because we've certainly seen we've seen some of the most beautiful. I mean, I'm sure you've seen a person that you're like, oh my God. Okay. That is sort of the data we use to come to this imaginative. Maybe you can't imagine. That's okay. Maybe you don't have images in your head or something, but you imagine this most beautiful person that should they walk into the room, it's like, no one's going to argue. Or, yeah, chat says so pretty it hurts. So pretty it hurts, right? And this goes for all genders, but people usually think of women, but like all genders. And then there's your personal relationship too. One time I saw this girl and I was like, man, this girl's like a 9, bro. This girl's so attractive. I showed her to my brother and he was like 7. I was like, 7? And then I realized like, that's that personal. But is your personal really personal if it's not deconstructed? Do you actually think she's a 7? Or do you think she's a 7 because what your boys think? And that's the other part of it. Do you think this girl is pretty? Do you actually think she's beautiful? Or, you ever hear those stories? They had a whole episode of Sex and the City about this guy who's dating this girl, but she doesn't look the way she thought, or the way he thought she would look, right? There was like this, I don't remember where I heard the story, TikTok, Reddit, fake, real, who knows? But a woman said she overheard, maybe it was a call-in show. A woman said she overheard her husband talking about her, and he agreed with his friends, like, yeah, she's not as pretty, but I love her, and she's cool, bro. I'm settling, but it's worth it. If I heard that, I would be like, hold up, wait a second, I'm gonna cry, right? So if that's the way you look at your partner, that's crazy. I would never look at anyone I love and think I settled for you. You're not as hot, but I settled. Because when you're in love, that person is a 10 to you, but they're not literally a 10, but you're in love with them, so they're a 10 to you, right? That's the point. What I'm trying to say is there is a personal that says, oh yeah, like I'm attracted to this person, they're a 10. But then there's just like outside of your personal worldview, that is obviously the prettiest person in the room. So example, if we took 10 people and put them up against the wall and like debated who is the prettiest, we could generally do this, yes? In the same way we could figure out who was tallest, okay? It's just people really think that beauty isn't like tallness, and I do. I think it's pretty obvious. Like if you give me a line of 10 dogs, I could line them up prettier to ugliest. And I feel like I could do that with food. Give me a tree, give me a flower, give me a chair. Oh, give me a chair. Give me furniture. And I could rank them 1 to 10. But I think because I'm having this experience, it might, but again, I don't know where I am on my deconstruction journey. So it's really hard to say like where you should be or where you're at. Cause who knows, girl? I mean, I'm a lot of years away from being prepubescent Brittany as well. And I remember sort of being a kid, but remember like being a kid, you know what I mean? Like beauty standards, what is attractive, all those things change even as a child. I was just thinking about this the other day where if you ask somebody like, oh, who are you? That's a great question. What does that even mean? Like, I think it's what's difficult, especially on my deconstruction gender journey. Like I have felt so, okay, so in one part of my brain, I think I have felt so confident about my gender my whole life. I am a woman. But the truth is that if I look back at my life and I think about all of the moments I questioned, or all of the moments I went back and forth, or all of the moments I fought about what clothes I was wearing, or what my leg hair looked like, or what my face looked like, or I haven't been always comfortable in my gender. But in some ways, I've always been obnoxiously confident about being Britney. But then I've been so deeply insecure about it as well. And the facet of those contradictory realities, I think, is what confuses people. Because from the outside, you're described as this great and confident and blunt and amazing person. Wow, she's such a girl boss. But the internal complex of me stomping around my house and throwing myself onto the floor and being like, what am I doing with my life? And then getting up and showing up again is that like part about being a human that's so funny. I'm so confident, don't tell me what to do, but also because you explained to me in exact detail how I should move throughout my life. Thank you. It's that meme. And that's what gender can feel like. So I really love this D'Angelo Wallace clip from their recent stream. And I don't know what pronouns D'Angelo is going to go by, like more presently or permanently. So like if we have an update on that, check this part out of the stream. It really stood out to me because it's the first time someone said it in a way that really resonated with me. I was like, that's what I'm experiencing. This is my experience currently for present day Britney. Here we go.
An extra step here. This isn't science. This isn't like, I don't know, queer theory. I don't know that stuff. But I kind of sometimes feel like everyone is their own gender. Maybe that just sounded really dumb, or maybe it's, I don't know. Sometimes when I really, really think about gender, I'm like, maybe this is just me having no connection to gender, or maybe my perspective on this is wrong, but I'm just like, I don't know. Sometimes I just feel like maybe it wasn't that there was only two genders or two genders and no genders. Maybe there are like 8 billion of them.
Definitely 100%. And I would go a step further and say, when we tend to say, oh, like, I'm not a label, I'm not a gender, I'm just me, I would go farther than that. I think saying I'm just me is like saying I'm colorblind, personally. Because what I think it is denying the reality that you're having an experience. It's almost like taking away your experience, maybe. Like the thing of like, I don't believe in beauty or ugly. What? I don't believe in, you're saying, you're almost like, oh, I eat dessert, but I don't taste it. Instead of experiencing it to its fullest, it's like we're denying ourselves the experience of it to its fullest. And I want to experience life to its fullest. And so I find that instead of running away from going into and experiencing, which is why I think detransition is not the worst thing in the world from the perspective of, I thought I was, but I'm not. I actually think it's about sometimes going into something and then being like, oh, this isn't for me. Or buying a house you realize you shouldn't have bought. Or it's not that you want to make mistakes, it's that you will. So harm reduce, suffer wisely, make the least amount of mistakes, but also accept that a lot of our experiences are about going like fully in and then being like, just kidding. My bad. Same with gender identity. So I remember when I was younger, and this is for all the people in my audience that don't know this story, but when I was younger and I was talking to my friends about being gay, they were like, well, what are you? And I was like, well, I think I like boys and girls. They're like, no. And I was like, no. They're like, no. Bisexual girls are just straight girls who make out for men. And I was like, that's kind of true though. And they're like, you can't be bi. That's not a thing. You got to pick lesbian or straight. And I'm like, well, which one am I? I was like, okay, well, I'm going to pick lesbian. And then I identified as a lesbian for a few years, but then I dated a guy. And then I was like, what is this? And then now there are lesbians who date men. And I'm like, that makes sense to me. There are lesbians and gay men who are married with kids. And I'm like, that makes sense to me. Because at the end of the day, we have to stop assigning action to label when it's a personal experience that doesn't dictate the future. So a gay man isn't obligated to marry a gay man. A gay man can have a relationship with a woman, specifically a lesbian, and they can decide to have kids together. The problem with the world is that we assume gender and orientation dictate action. We do this with color as well, but a big part of why we do these things is because it gives people a sense of order, what to do next. And then when you take out that order, it confuses everything. But that's why I think D'Angelo's onto something to say that it's personal, right? I think that's really important. Okay. So when we have these conversations and we pick these labels, the labels are up to you, what works within your framework and construct. But I think they're less important or more important just based off of the most present. I just don't think they're like permanently important, but I think they can be. And that permanence, okay, if life is just moments in time and sometimes a moment can last a lifetime, it doesn't really mean it's permanent in the way that people want it to be permanent. You know? Did you guys ever have the family? I have the kind of family that honestly, I don't know who's gay and not gay, because every time a gay kid comes out in the family, people go, guys, that's totally normal. Having thoughts about people is normal, dude. You're not gay. And I'm like, are you gay? And like, that's the problem. It's like, are you gay, bro? And so when we sit there and we have these conversations, I never know, like, are you just saying that so you're like trying to get us not to be gay because you're like, it's just normal, you're fine? Or are you actually gay, bro? And it's that inability to deconstruct your experience and actually be like, I think I might just be gay or whatever. You know, it's a very confusing thing. And also this plays into this idea that like, recently, what's her name? Tehani from The Good Place. She said, she's been quoted, it's been going around like, I'm going to misquote it because I didn't even plan to say this, but now I'm thinking about it. Something like, people who think you can choose to be gay chose to be straight. That it's so reductive though, right? But it could be possible. Yeah, Jamil. It could be possible. It could be the thing, but also it feels reductive. Or, if you hate gay men, you're on the DL, or you're actually gay. It's like, maybe some people, for sure, but always, you know. Wait, I'm just live. Oh, my mouse. Bye, Indiana. Love you. It's Indiana's food time. Okay, so I didn't want my partner to walk in. I'm like, oh. Okay. So, when we have these conversations, I do think that the point is not to work on getting to an answer, but to accept that the answer is fluid and based off the moment in time you're existing in, right? Okay, so check this out. Let's let D'Angelo finish this thought, actually. Hold on.
Maybe everybody has their own. But listen. It's like, that's not invalidating. Like, for every person who is like, I'm a man. No, you know what I mean? You definitely are. And I agree with you. I just think that's one of the 8 billion ways of being a man. Personally, I don't know. Like, I don't know.
I agree.
Validating everybody's experiences. So it doesn't matter whether you are, you know, it doesn't matter. Nothing matters. Be who you are. Just tell me your pronouns so I don't get them wrong, and I'll use them.
I think sometimes religious people especially are so afraid, which is why we don't want to do anything out of fear. They're so afraid of getting it wrong. Their fear of, you know, it's interesting that they're saying we can't raise kids without gender, which I don't think we should do. P.S. By the way, you know how they say that? Like, we should raise kids genderless? I don't actually think that's the solution. Once again, I don't want to run away from gender. I want our kids to go deeper into gender. What does gender mean to you? What's your experience been? How do you feel about things? I think in a home that is truly open to gender experience, pronouncing your kid's not even going to matter. Because the moment that kid has a way to express it, you know, themselves, you're going to be able to adapt. I think the issue is not giving those kids those options because they're going to see it in the world around them. So it's like, I don't want to raise my kid genderless. I would want to raise my kid with options. And so like genderless is a funny term. And I think people are just overcorrecting because we don't have a script for it, which is why we create scripts for the best outcome, but then the scripts become outdated. And when we become outdated, we kind of don't know what to do because then we're like, but I thought this was true. I thought we figured it out. Figuring it out is a lifelong pursuit. That is what philosophy is, right? We do philosophy through pop culture because philosophy is the love of wisdom. We're exploring, we're figuring it out. We want to know who we're supposed to be, okay? So I want to take us back now, okay, really fast. Whiplash you back into 1961. This is, and by the way, a lot of the content today, there's a good chance we get copyrighted. So I have a lot of videos just in case some of them don't work. This is from ABC News In Depth. This is education a waste for married women? And this is retro focus. Because remember, we're talking about gender. So we're still going to talk about women and men. because gender isn't just a conversation for queer people. It's just explored specifically in a different way through this lens, right? And I think that's very important to pay attention to. So check this out.
Reasonably, I suppose, Tony Thompson and Jean Inkster
Oop.
in the press recently, and that is, we're going to argue about a subject that's been causing a great deal of controversy in the press recently, and that is whether education is a waste of time for married women. So, of course, I've got two married women to talk about it, and they're both educated. Reasonably, I suppose, Tony Thompson and Jean Inkster. Now, tell me, first of all, your qualifications, Tony. What have you got by way of education?
I have a trained kindergarten certificate.
And Jean, what about you?
I'm a pharmaceutical chemist.
Well, that's a fair average sort of an education. Tony, why don't you think that education's a good thing for married women?
Well, I think too much higher education makes them very unhappy and very frustrated.
Oh, why unhappy?
Well, there they are at home, cooking meals, running a house.
Oh, but still you get a certain amount of satisfaction out of that.
Oh, yes. But you can't get out and about too much.
Oh, yes, you can. You can organise yourself so that you can do your housework first.
So obviously, they're talking about this idea that, and by the way, we're not going to watch this whole video. I just want to explain to you that like this conversation here, like, oh, when women are too educated, they're unhappy, they become restless, it's not good for them, they have so many things to do at home. Same conversation we've been having forever. And that's what I want you to pay attention to. That's what I want you to grow up a hold on. That's okay. So what's the point of going back to the basics, right? Let's just go over it really fast. We are trying to make a better world, make a less bad world. We're trying to make a joyful population. We're in crisis after crisis and all of the solutions aren't working. So here we are right now. The gender war says go back to tradition, and this is the tradition. The same conversation we've been having forever. It's not working. Some of the happiest communities are communities with options and choices, but they also get choice paralysis. What's it called? Choice paralysis. They also get stunted by the options. So also we know human beings need fewer options, but the right amount of options. So we want to give people the right amount of options. And my way of eradicating the paralyzation is to say, what will make me joyful? Not what will make me happy, what will make me joyful. Happy is different. Happy is eating the 2 bags of potato chips on the counter. Joyful will be eating just the right amount of potato chips so I don't feel bad from the grease, because I really do. It really hurts my tummy. And 2, I won't regret it in the morning. Okay? So joy isn't taking potato chips out of my diet. It's eating the right amount. Figuring out the right amount of potato chips so it doesn't give me negative consequences. But if I just wanted to be happy for a night, and trust me, I feel it sometimes. Sometimes I'm like, I'm going to eat both these potato chips. And I'm like, sit down, Brittany. Because even though it'll make you happy right now, you're going to be so miserable in 2 hours and tomorrow, right? So we're going for joy. And that makes you, it does force you to pause and weigh the pros and cons of like, I could do this, I could just, and it does force you to have to think. And that's kind of the problem, is that it does force you to pause and think about the consequences of your actions. And that is the first step to introspecting, is just to be able to have the skill to pause and actually think about what happens if you do this. Most of us are not doing that, right? Most of us are moving very quickly. Most of us aren't even thinking. And so we know that it ultimately, okay, this same question about, is education good for women? Should women be getting educated? This is a tale as old a time. And it's not about should women get educated, because there's the other part of it. Women saying women ought to get educated. Okay, that any intelligent woman should go to college. And it's like, okay, well, it's not, listen, everyone should go to college in the sense that everyone should want a higher education. But the way the structure of college is now, I don't think it's actually literally necessary for every person of every gender to go to college. But I would argue that if we had a system of education that was maybe different, that we would all want to have some access to higher education, which would be beautiful. If higher education looked different, I think all of us would do it, because like, why the fuck not? It's so cool. It's so interesting. We definitely would want it. But given the structure of education right now, it's a big ask. So yes, I agree in feeling with the sentiment, but okay, so there's that, right? Okay, I think we're done with that, right? We don't need to go further into that video. I just wanted to give okay, now, modern day, what it is to be a woman. And this is important because my internal experience is not identifying with this experience right now. So when they talk about should women be educated, I don't think they're thinking about me. I used to, though. I used to think, oh, should I get a college degree so I can be a woman who's educated? And now I don't even hear myself in the conversation. This secondary conversation, some of you already in the Discord told me to watch this video. I'd been watching it this morning over my coffee. And as they were talking, I just kept thinking to myself, oh my God, I don't belong here. And I was like, what does this mean for my life that I don't belong here? And also, is this part of why Chelsea's content has become so like, to me, because she's been obsessed with interpersonal relationships, very gender binary, and very much about woman, 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 but in a way that just does not feel good to me. So check out this podcast. Check it out, because I've been wondering why her content also hasn't been feeling good to me. Watch this. We'll talk about it, okay?
Can you tell us a little bit about who you are, how old you are, what you do, who you are?
Sure. My name is Sophia Chang. I'm the baddest bitch in the room. I'm 60 years old. I was the first Asian woman in hip hop, and
I don't know why this audio is so low on this podcast, so you'll have to deal with it, but it is very low.
I then moved into martial arts. I am an author, a screenwriter, a public speaker, a life coach, and the founder of a mentorship program called Unlock Your Potential for Women of Color.
Damn. And what do you do in your spare time?
I watch a lot of prestige television.
Ooh, tell me more. What are your shows?
I just finished watching Slow Horses with my daughter.
My husband loves that show.
And you don't?
It seems like a boy show to me. I categorize shows like that as boy shows.
Oh, that's interesting.
Isn't it about like CIA officers or
Yeah,
something?
if the spy kind of thriller, John le Carre style, you consider boy, then that's definitely what this is. That said, I really love the female characters in it.
Oh. So what does it mean to be the baddest in the room?
It means something different for everybody, Chelsea.
What does it mean for you?
And for me, it is all of the facets that make up this gem. And my invitation to women is, because it's not just about me, and even though I am a language major and I'm very clear that saying that you're the baddest in the room means that it is superlative and you are the only one, that is absolutely not what it's about. I invite every woman, femme, to consider themselves the baddest in the room. Here's the exercise, and I'd like you to do it tonight.
Okay, I'm listening.
You will write a list of all of the things that you love about yourself. And I don't care what they are. They can be big, they can be small, they can be external, they can be internal. It can be, I am a loyal friend. I volunteer every holiday season. I make the best salted chocolate chip cookie. I host fantastic dinner parties. I am great at, I really, I have a smile that lights up a room. I have an ass that can stop traffic. That list is yours. And you write down that list. But what's amazing, Chelsea, is that the list begets the list. So I don't think that we as women are ever invited to celebrate ourselves. And so here it is, and it is deeply personal, and you write it all down, and you can even ask your friends, because I bet they'll tell you things that you haven't thought about yourself. And you write down this list, and then you go, wait a minute, and then, and the list can change, and you can add to that list, and then you look at that list and you go, I am ABC, blah, 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 blah. My name is Sophia Chang, and I'm the baddest in the room. And it's an exercise that I implore all women to go through, because the world that we live in, the dominant culture, does not want us to empower and celebrate ourselves in this way. So for me,
Listen to that again.
want us to go through, because the world that we live in, the dominant culture, does not want us to empower and celebrate ourselves in this way. So for me, I'm a 60-year-old Asian woman who is standing on top of tables and pounding my chest and saying that I'm the baddest in the room, and I believe it with all of my heart. There's no part of me that's like, maybe I'm just the mediocre in the room. No, I am very full-throatedly the baddest in the room. I think it's radical, and it's very important. You know, people will read my hat or read my jacket or my T-shirt, whatever, and say, are you really the baddest in the room? And I'll say, oh, you see, here's the thing, sweetie. Whether or not you believe it doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is that I do. This is not a popularity contest. I didn't write my memoir so everybody would go, I love her, I want to be like her. I couldn't stand another Sophia Chang on this planet. The exhortation is to be more fully yourself.
Right.
And to just open up the aperture and your imagination on who you can be. That is the exercise of being the baddest in the room. And I really would love everybody who is watching to do this. And you keep that list and you put it in a treasure chest, and only you hold the key. And nobody can ever take that list and take stuff off of it. No. You can't tell me I'm not kind. You can't tell me I'm not funny. You can't tell me I'm not brilliant. And this is your center. I talk about our center. This is your center. What makes you the baddest is your center. And we will sway, and we will stumble and fumble. I've done it many times. I've even fallen, but I always get back up. Always get back up.
So we usually start the episodes.
Okay. Okay. what tends to happen, and going back to the bell hooks opening, okay, so bell hooks basically brings up intersectionality, but she specifically said to not see herself through the lens of whiteness, to not see yourself through the lens of patriarchy. I do believe this rhetoric no longer is interesting to my brain, because I do still think it's only seeing yourself through the lens of patriarchy. When she says the dominant world won't let us be, doesn't want to see us X, so therefore Y, it makes me think like, okay, valid and beautiful. And also, what next? Because I do think, and this is important, right? Like ultimately, the best audience to gather when you're giving people tools is an audience who's never even tried before, right? And yet there is something like next that I think is important, though it's a much smaller community. So, I think that's important. There are tons of women right now that are still, they don't even understand that they're allowed to have an orgasm during sex, right? There are billions of women on the planet right now who have so much internalized misogyny. They're convinced like every man is literally biologically smarter than them, right? This stuff is so important to deconstruct, and we need people doing it. But, when you go on a gender deconstruction journey, I think like the one I'm having especially, it's like this stuff is so important, but it's not resonating deep within my consciousness anymore. So I'm thinking about that idea of like, why isn't this deeply resonated with me anymore? And why doesn't it matter? Now, a big part of it is that I'm not 60 and she is. And so she's a 60-year-old probably thinking about women in her generation, right? What's interesting is that Chelsea is my age, but she keeps hanging out with older women who I think she almost wants to admire in a sense. But a part of me is like, no offense to older women, but some of them feel very disconnected from like where we are now. So like, the world is still patriarchal and the world is still very much in the binary, but they like, and I'll keep playing it because she says something really important here where she like recognizes her privilege and that she's a cis woman and stuff like that. But the dilemma with that is like, if you know that's true and you know that perspective, then like, do you know enough? Like, does that explain the disconnect, I suppose? And then what does that mean for the audience who's listening? Okay. So chat said something. They said they had been to Chelsea's book signing. And hold on, I want to read this because it's so interesting. You said, when I met her, I said, I like your finance content, especially as a young person. And it was clear she did not want to talk about that content / is trying to pivot to home stuff. Granted, her book was about it. That's why I'm looking at Chelsea like, I don't want this content from you. As a person who's like, you're called the financial diet. Don't talk to me about my interpersonal relationships with like women. I already have other people to watch for that. I want you to explain the economy to me in a way that like gives me numbers and math, because the only other people doing it on the internet are men. So can you please go back to telling me numbers? But the dilemma, right, is that she herself is probably going on a journey where this is obviously what she needs. So the content now isn't for the audience. It's for where Chelsea is in her life, which is so valid because that's what my content does, right? So that's fine. But great. Now we need who's the next like queer gender fluid person or / woman or / even progressive man who's going to come in. Okay. Like who is that person who's not just like a crypto bro? Because I tell you this right now, like we definitely need it. We definitely need it. And no, you cannot talk about it enough. If you can talk about women, saying, don't So this whole video is called What Really Happens When You Decenter Men. Okay, this conversation is the same conversation of how to buy a house in this economy, except your finance channel also go back to the house in this economy, right? Like it's the same conversation. So if you're not going to go deeper, if you're not going to have a more in-depth conversation about gender dynamics, and you're still going to do the basics of finance. This is a finance channel. But see how gender becomes all-encompassing? Because you might say, well, finance is dictated by gender. Yes, but see how we now have lost a resource about finance? We now lost a resource about finance. We did not gain a resource about gender. We did not need this one. We already have so many people talking about gender who are, in my opinion, a little bit more qualified. Because they're not finance people. They're gender people. They're philosophy people. They're psychologists. Chelsea's a finance girly. Talk about finance. You know what I mean? Like, yes, they overlap, but focus on your main vibe. Now, why is gender taking over Chelsea's life? Because it is everything. It's political, okay? it's sociological, it's, what word was I even trying to go for? It's economical, it's social, it's hierarchy, it's everything, right? So when we have this conversation, I get why Chelsea feels like it's connected. So notice that Chelsea's work in terms of economics has been like, women should always have separate bank accounts, or women should always have their own money. It's a fear-based. Women should always feel terrified of the possibility of divorce, have a second account. Instead of, women should strive to only be partnered to people who are in the same goodness as themselves, which is what I would say, which is what Ramit would say. He would say, hey, like, is this your person? Do you trust them the way you trust yourself? Are they a good person like you're a good person? Then combine finances, because you would never steal from your partner, right? You would never do XYZ. But yet, Chelsea doesn't say that. Even though Chelsea's been married 13 years, Chelsea says within the gender dynamic of her relationship, make sure you have your own money. Which then makes me doubt Chelsea's marriage. Not that I should ever do that, but you know what I'm saying? When you're so focused on gender as a reaction to patriarchy, how do you even get to explore your gender in a free way? So here's this video about decentering men. How are you decentering men to make sure out of paranoia of marrying a man, you always have a second account? I want to decenter gender as an idea that even being a man itself means you'll be bad with money. In the same way, being a woman doesn't mean you'll be bad with money. But I think people are bad when it comes to ethics and values, and therefore you're bad with money. I just watched a video from Ramit where the husband had $500,000 of debt and the wife didn't know. But that's not because he was a man. That's because the structure of the society we exist in tells people not to look at their bank statements, not to pay attention to fees, not to care that Netflix keeps raising its prices, to just keep paying, right? And that's the problem. Like, when we have these conversations, I want to, what's next? I get it. Patriarchy, boo. I hate it. Let's go next. What happened? So you guys ask me, like, when I look at the levels, the framework of the levels, what fiveness is to me is the actual radical acceptance that, like, we're simply existing and having an experience first. Then the question is, what is that experience going to be? While accepting that we live in a community of people. The world of the two says, I have an experience that's dictated by, and it's usually centered around things that come from the planet Earth, politics, people, planet. Fiveness is saying, I am impacted by the reality that I exist within the framework of the universe. It's saying you exist outside of political structures, but you still exist within them. Your consciousness, this is why when Bell Hooks says to not see herself simply through the lens of whiteness is so important to my brain. It says you exist outside of the lens. You exist outside of the lens. And yet we still have to understand how that lens will change the way we're treated. But you do exist, okay? And that's what I think where gender becomes an issue. Where they'll say, Brittany, you can't tell women not to have a second account. Men are so dangerous. I would just tell you not to marry that man. Don't marry that man. I'm dead ass serious. Like, they're like, but I love him. Well, I'm not marrying anyone or mixing my money with people I do not trust. Are there women in your life you could share money with? I bet if I asked these women, they'd say yes. So you are simply not sharing money with him because he's a man. Because I guarantee you, if I asked Chelsea Fagan, would you recommend women share money? Would women be able to trust each other? She'd probably say yes. Maybe she'd say no. Maybe she'd say no. But I really think she'd say yes. And that's what I'm trying to say shouldn't matter. Am I not going to trust D'Angelo Wallace with money because they were assigned male at birth? Why? You know what I'm saying? I don't want to look at anybody in my life and say, I'm not going to give you my money because you were assigned male at birth. But I will say that a man or a person assigned male at birth who has not deconstructed shouldn't be trusted with more than just money, but with a lot of other things. And yet we do it every day. You trust them with your bodies. You trust them with your children, but you won't trust them with your money. You're willing to let this man inside you to live with you at night when he can turn around and choke you to death anytime, but you won't trust him with your money? So interesting, you'll trust him with your life, but not your money. And that's what I'm saying. Life is money, money is life. If you are afraid he will steal your money, you should be afraid he's going to kill you at nighttime. And I don't see the difference. And so for the fact that we do is very interesting. Okay, listen to this second part.
By asking per the name of the show at what age things started getting good for you. But I would actually sort of modify it slightly in this case to ask at what age you started feeling and talking this way about yourself.
That's a much smarter question for me.
Yes.
Yes. No.
Well, what's the age?
50.
50.
I think it was 50.
Wow. Okay, tell me about that.
So here's the thing, Chelsea. When I think about when life was good for me, I am a cishet, able-bodied, intelligent, thin, traditionally attractive woman. You know, life was good.
Yeah.
Meaning I walk with a lot of privilege. But when did I start to really own being the baddest? Was around 50. So I had 2 children, and at 40, I was so sure, Chelsea, I never need to have sex again. I'm so good. I'm so good. And I was convinced. Have you not met women like this?
Several on this show, actually.
Yes. Yeah, I'm good. I've had my kids, I'm good. And then as I started to go, maybe I want to reconsider that decision. And I
Question: what's the difference between when men have a midlife crisis and when women do? Men run away from finding themselves and go into a fantasy. Women tend to find themselves, but not always. Is this her midlife crisis? Is that what she's explaining to me? Or is this true liberation? That is a very difficult question to answer. And I'm not accusing her of either, by the way. I don't know. But that's the question you should ask yourself. Am I about to switch up my whole life because I'm having a midlife crisis? And then here's the theory. I don't want to have a midlife crisis. I think a lot of us had a 25-year crisis. We're good. We had a quarter life crisis. I think the way to avoid a midlife crisis is to be introspective and live in the most present. A lot of these people who have their realization older in life is because they aren't thinking about their life. I love how she admits, and how we all have to admit, we have children so fucking easily with no thought. And here we are discovering our life. And that's the point. We, like, so many marriages, there's this woman right now going viral on TikTok, on my side of TikTok, who's like deconstructing Christianity. And she has 7 kids. And she said, if I know what I knew now, I wouldn't have married my husband and I wouldn't have had these kids. And I hate that. She goes, I hate that this religion took from me a choice. But the truth is, and this is the hard part, existing on the planet will take away your ability, without introspection, extrospection, choice. So we'll say this about detransitioners. We'll say, let kids be kids. Don't let them transition young because they might regret it later. But then we'll raise kids in religion. And we won't let those kids regret their religion. My parents will not let me regret being raised Catholic. My brother, who's younger than me, won't tell his kids his siblings are no longer practicing because in his religion, we're always technically Catholic because we got confirmed. You won't let us say that thing we did as a child, I regret doing and I didn't want to do it, but you won't let kids have the same experience with gender or anything else. And they'll say, oh, it's because Christianity or whatever doesn't require surgery. That's not necessarily true, depending on what religious, relationship you're having with your religion, right? Okay. So when we have this conversation, we talk about regret. First, regret is a part of life. You're going to regret things. Don't beat yourself up over regret. Yes, learn from other people's, actions, learn from your own actions, try to make less mistakes. But we have to first deconstruct regret. Why are you regretful for being a person? Now, I understand I have done plenty of things that I'm like not proud of, things I would never do now, right? And yet, it also is like what it means to be a person, which is why I believe in restorative justice and forgiveness and therapy and getting better. And I believe in preventative care. We want to prevent harm. We want to prevent abusive relationships. We want to prevent badly timed surgeries or mistakes in terms of XYZ. We want to prevent things, which is again back to the beauty standard. The beauty standard, when deconstructed, doesn't eradicate beauty or your decision to want to get plastic surgery, but it might help you actually choose better plastic surgery you want to get for your own aesthetic versus wanting to get it for the world, and or I saw this Instagram post about a man who had gotten a nose job. And it was like, he had changed his look significantly. And the people in the comments were roasting him. And they're like, we liked your nose before. If your idea of deconstructing beauty standards is making fun of the way people look for choosing to be conventional, that's not the kind of deconstruction I'm interested in. It's not good enough. It's not deep enough for me. Go deeper. It's like when I was deconstructing my fat phobia. This is 2015, 2014. Maybe I was deconstructing my fat phobia, and I remember saying, this is so stupid now, but I remember saying, you're so skinny, eat a burger, as a way to counter my fat phobia that I had learned. But what is that? That's not fucking helpful either. But do you guys remember going through that stage where you think countering the thing you learned was doing like an opposite? Okay, remember, opposite is not necessarily a good framework. Men are not opposite of women. Women are not opposite of men. Okay? Fat phobia, the opposite of fat phobia is not to make fun of skinny people. Like, we don't want to do opposites. Like, we don't want to just counter in the reverse. We want to actually go forward. Okay? So again, like, how do I, as a way to liberate women out of patriarchy, liberate them out of the fear of building a relationship with themselves and their partners? Like, what does that look like if I say have a good to-go bag? What does that look like if I say always have a second bank account? Like, what does that look like if I always say don't trust your partner? What does that look like if I always say like your partner can switch up on you? You can switch up on you. You can switch up on you. And that's the point, right? Okay, check this out.
I started dating, and it was really a lot about my self-actualization that brought me to the place.
You know, one of the things, and you sort of alluded to this, but I have spent the past few days binging your videos. Compliments to the chef. They're great. But one that really stuck out to me was a video you made recently about man-centering, I think was how you put it. And I would just love to hear kind of, in your words, what your thesis is on what man-centering is, who's doing it, how you feel about it, your whole sort of manifesto there.
So some weeks ago, the New York Times published an article about man-keeping. And man-keeping is a term that was coined, a phrase that was coined by Angelica Ferrara. She is I believe, a postdoctoral student at Stanford. And the idea of man-keeping is all of the emotional, particularly emotional and social caretaking that we do of men. Man-centering, I would say, is a little bit broader. So actually, one of your guests said, I realized after my divorce, I was going for a run, and all of my playlists were his music. Do you remember this conversation?
Of course, Lindsay. Yeah.
And I thought, this is man-centering. We listen to his music. Now, of course, we're talking about heterosexual couples. So if you think about Lindsay, she said, I was listening to my ex-husband's music. And I think this is really common.
Is it really common? Pause. I've never heard of that my whole life. I have never met a single person who's ever had that experience. Whoa. I can't even process what I just heard. I don't think I've ever met anybody like that in my whole life. Every single person I could think of, my mom, my dad, they all have their own musical preferences. They have overlap, but I know exactly what my mom listens to and I know what my dad listens to. I know everybody's preference. Whoa. I wonder what bubble that's common in. That's so interesting. So, okay. Interesting. New bubble for me. She says it's common. So she must really be in a bubble where that's really, yeah. Okay. Interesting. Right? Oh, chat says, I think she just meant the man centering is very common and not specifically the music thing. Oh, okay. Okay. That makes more sense. Okay. That makes more sense.
We listen to their music.
No. She just said we listen to their music.
And I think this is really common.
No, she is saying that, right?
We listen to their music.
I don't.
We watch their shows.
Absolutely not.
We become interested in sports when we might not necessarily have done so.
Absolutely do not.
I have a
Sure, some people do that. She's saying women show interest in their male counterparts' activities in order to appeal to him. She's talking about a very specific stage in a woman's life that I feel like everyone in my life has kind of like moved past. But older generations, I think, were suffering from a lot more, right? Because like, yeah, I remember I was, I try to be supportive of people in my life, but I always usually say like, I'm not going to watch this. Like I dated a guy for a very short time who liked football for only local games. And I was watching the Super Bowl with him. And I remember thinking like, I don't like this. And he was like, that's okay. And I was like, but I'll watch it and I'll try to understand it. But like, I don't really like it, but also I want to be supportive, but I'm not going to pretend to like it either. So maybe that's what it is. I'm not going to be a poo-poo though. I'm not going to poo-poo on your happiness either. Or like one of my girlfriends is like my sports girlfriend and I've been to baseball games with her. I've watched basketball games with her. I've watched football games with her, but it's like her family's the sport family. And when I hang out with them, I watch sports, but they know I don't really get it. I'm just there to enjoy the vibe. Okay, so I get what she's saying in that regard. She's talking about a very specific kind of woman that's trying to show interest. It's like the girls who play video games because their boyfriends do. Like they want to show versus just like actually liking video games. Okay, she's talking about, okay, but what's the difference between supporting your partner and what they like There is a difference. So I had a partner who also liked board games, and I don't care for tabletop games, girls. I'm going to be real. Like, I have a very short fuse and patience, but I will play with people. People in Seattle especially love that fucking shit. And fine. Okay. I'm with you. I'll play Catan, whatever. Okay. Would I do it in my free time? Fuck no. Will I do it in my free time to support my friends and family? Yes. So I will go and do it, and I won't be a bitch about it. Okay. I'll be like very happy about it. But that's not because I'm trying to impress my friends. So she's talking about a specific girl that is losing her personality and self to a man. This, I think, is a much older dynamic, and maybe some younger girls who are still doing it. But damn, this feels so deconstructed. I mean, this was shit we were deconstructing 20 years ago. No, 18, 16 years ago. So interesting. Okay, we can process this bubble together, right? Okay.
Friend who, when her ex-husband's mother was ill, she took care.
That is so common.
Is it?
Actually,
Pause. Listen to that again.
I don't.
Might not necessarily have done so. I have a friend who, when her ex-husband's mother was ill, she took care.
Okay. When her ex-husband's mother was ill, she took care of her. Okay, first of all, not always male-centered, can be male-centered. Because if you have a relationship with that woman, then that's just you having a relationship with a fellow woman. Right? Because that woman's also a person. But if you don't like that woman, you do not feel connected to her, and because it's your ex-wife, your ex-husband's mom, then okay. But what if you actually just like that woman? So I think it's either or. It depends on the context. And I say this as somebody who like loves my ex's mother. Like, I love my ex's mother so much, so deeply. I love her so much. And I really see her as a whole human being. She is not just my ex's mother. She is a wonderful human being. And so like, I would, you know what I mean? So I can see it either way. It just depends on the context, right? And that's what's so important about these conversations. Remember we talked about it yesterday? One action in one context is toxic, and one action in another context is healthy. And they're the same action. It's just the context changes the relationship. So be very careful about this idea of saying, oh my God, can you believe she took care of this woman? Yeah. I can. You know what I mean? Right? Now, Chad said, I actually know women who take care of their husband's mom, but because they feel like it's an obligation. That is why we have to decenter and deconstruct family dynamics, which we'll talk about next week. We have to deconstruct family dynamics. What is my moral and ethical obligation to my blood relatives or to the people I marry? Am I obligated to help this person because they are part of my family structure? Or are we going to build relationships with married families that say, pause, should I show up for you in this way? Do you understand I'm not coming to help you? Do you understand also that in the right circumstance, of course I'm going to help you? I mean, we talk about helping community and strangers. That's why people burn out, because helping people is hard, right? Let alone our family and friends. So the rule in my family is I always tell my siblings, you better do your damnedest to get your shit together. So when you need help, I don't feel like you're taking advantage of people, but call me when you need help. It is your obligation as a singular adult to do everything possible to make it easier on everybody else to carry the weight of when you're going to need help, because you will need help. You will need help. And if we already know you will need help, do not need help on purpose. You better need help on accident. Okay? It is so important that we get our shit together because we will need help. It's already hard enough knowing we will need help, you know? Okay.
That is so common.
Is it?
Actually, I don't have the stats on me, but we've talked about this in video essays, and the wife, the female partner, becoming the caretaker for the man's family in kind of sickness and health.
Yes.
And I know so many people, even in my own family, who, you know, the mother-in-law moves in. And this is also very cultural, obviously. There's
Yes.
a lot of cultures where that's really the norm. But I think that that is probably statistically more the norm. Because men in general, the stats there don't lie. Like, as people age, get sick, have high needs, generally speaking, men are not stepping in and taking care
we're
of,
the caregivers.
even if it's their wife.
Yeah, we're the de facto caregivers. Never mind as mothers. If you're a mother.
I just don't want this conversation to be, have you seen those women that divorce their abusive ex-husbands and go, oh, I divorced him and gave him full custody? This is not a win. You bringing a consciousness into the universe and then handing it over to your abuser is not a win. But they say it like it is. Like, good. If he wanted to be a father so bad and divorce you, he can have full custody. And I know mothers feel obligated to take on the children, to take the children into full custody. But the way to gotcha is not to give your abuser the kids. Okay? And this is why I say even abuse victims don't make good mothers or good fathers. Like, abuse victims don't automatically mean good people. Okay? But I've seen so many of those TikToks at this point that I'm like, Jesus Christ, none of you are thinking about the kids. None of you are really thinking about the kids. Now, that's different if you get a divorce and the female partner, for whatever reason, just happens to be in a worse economic state. And it's obviously better for the kids to be taken care of by the father, but there's no abuse. Then it's like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Right? That could make sense. Again, deconstructing gender dynamics allows for different family structures to exist, which is also, I saw another TikTok that was like, the internet, this woman's like, I don't know why the internet's confused. I made a baby with somebody. We were together. We're now not together. And I still am the breadwinner. This person, just because we're divorced, didn't get up and go get a job. And I'm like, that could work temporarily and make a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. But I wonder what the long-term plan is. Will you remarry? Maybe they won't. Maybe they've already decided that, like, this is still the person I used to love. We just went in separate directions, right? Or maybe, there's what will you do when you deconstruct gender is you allow for more options. You're not eradicating gender. We're not ignoring that it exists. We're going into having a deeper relationship with it. And we're saying my gender doesn't dictate who makes the money. My gender doesn't dictate X, Y, Z. So if your family structure wants to work in a particular way in which this is your life, it can work. But if you keep going into the binary of what a gender expectation is, then you end up having situations where you feel obligated to take care of XYZ when you don't even want to because you are XYZ. But in order for us to do preventative care about these things, we must live within the joy of what could be rather than the fear of what could be. And right now, a lot of content right now is the fear of what could be. Look how scary your life could be versus, hey, look how good your life could be. Look how joyful your life could be. Now, one of the dilemmas is people really believe that the most joyful kind of woman is a woman who's a mother. But this itself needs to be deconstructed because the data is not showing that. The evidence is not showing that to be true. We are not seeing numbers that correlate with children and happiness in gendered people. We are not seeing that data. We are seeing quite the opposite. So in that case, we need to restructure. Okay? That's that. So this is a cis bubble conversation and it's valid for what it is, but it's not the only option. And so when we, as like people who are deconstructing gender, even as cis people, even if you're cis and deconstructing gender, this doesn't have to be your life. This conversation doesn't have to be the way you navigate your life. Your life doesn't always have to be in relation to patriarchy. You have to think about the patriarchy, but you also get to think about you outside of the patriarchy. You exist outside of patriarchy. You exist outside of these like structural systems that are meant to put you in a box and meant to limit your relationship to life, okay? Next video. Let's go back in time to 1937. You've probably seen this video, okay? You've probably seen this video.
Peter Alexander, this extraordinary character.
Okay, right? A little blast from the past. I want us to remember, things didn't just show up now. They've always existed. And there's a relationship that underground communities have been having with gender that are so much more, at least for my lived experience. Obviously, they make more sense to me as a queer person, but I can understand why people like Chelsea Fagan having this conversation is also really important. And so cis women don't need to be erased in our deconstruction of gender. Cis men don't need to be erased in our deconstruction of gender. Your cisness doesn't get erased. Our relationship with cisness becomes more. Right? Like being a cis person isn't a monolithic experience. And that's the point. And being trans and cis are also like words we use because it's the best we have, but it's not even the best we have. We know there are better ways to have this relationship, right? Even with the words we're using, because when we get into conversations about sex and biology, what all these things mean, which we'll talk about a little later, I think the problem is like, just like with anything else happening in your life, you didn't need a scientist or a doctor or a medical professional to tell you something was going on in your life. You knew, and then you went to the doctor, or you didn't even realize, and then the doctor helped you understand why XYZ was happening. But it's a relationship too. We are relating too. And even when we do a lot of these studies, we have to be careful because it's so biased, because we are biased and prejudiced. I mean, medicine throughout ever has always been incredibly misogynistic and very racist. So we have to be very careful, right? We trust the science, we question the science. Okay? And I know if you're paying attention to what this administration is doing, they're now officially saying that vaccines may cause autism or, this new food chart they put out, this new thing listen, okay? We're in one of those moments again. Okay, this reminds me of those stories about dentists pulling out everybody's teeth because they thought that was the best thing to do. Okay, or the way people experimented on Black women's bodies with no numbing, no drugs, no help to them, and they just massacred people in the name of science. We don't want that. Okay, we want slow, patient, methodical, thoughtful discoveries in science and or the self in order to move society in a better direction. If we don't believe in causing harm to people, we must think about what the idea is to even be a person who has sort of a natural inclination towards some level of violence, from what we eat to how we exist on the planet. So many vegans I hear from talk about medications, life-saving medications they take that either have been tested on animals and or have some animal component in them. And the question of whether or not they should take this medicine for their own life or for the animals, it's not about eradicating harm. It's about harm reduction. We need to at least start there. But people's brains go all or nothing. Are you boy, girl, trans, cis, good, bad? And it's like, yeah, these words are very helpful. I'm here for it. But also, they're not as helpful because they're going to stop you. It's like there's this new trend on TikTok that says, I want to be a vegan, but I love cheese. Okay, be a vegan that loves cheese. Oh, I want to go to the gym, but I'm not going to be able to do 100%. Okay, go to the gym, be 50%. I'm okay with this middle ground. I understand why people aren't, because you're right. It's not the goal. To be honest with you, I also don't like it. This middle ground section is like, this is good, but not good enough, but it's good. And this is where your patience comes in. I always ask the universe to give me patience, and this is a part of that patience. Hey, Chelsea's content is really helpful for people. Is it good enough? No. It's deeply failing in so many ways. But it's exactly what some people need at this stage in their life. So you know what? Fuck it. Good for you, girl. Keep it up. But also, Jesus Christ. But also keep it up. And that's the reality. And look, one day you might look at my content and say, yo, Brittany's content was so good for me, but I kind of outgrew it. You should probably, right? Like you should probably outgrow it, but maybe not. Maybe I'll always consistently be growing and we'll be on a similar timeline and we can grow together. But the truth is that like, there were times in my career where like, if I watched my old videos, I'd been like, man, I'm past this shit. I need something different. Right? So when we have these conversations, just know it's okay. It's always okay. Let's check out this video, or at least in part this video. Let me see. I'm going to put it at 1.25. I might have to slow it down depending on the audio. Queens at Heart 1967, girls. 1967. I don't know how loud it's going to be. Let's see. Okay, these are the credits. The credits. Oh, the credits are kind of long. Okay, preserved in 2009, but from 1967. Is that loud? How loud is that? I'm gonna skip it for copyright.
Project.
Here we go.
A research project that took us all over the country. In my office today, I'm Jay Martin. We have 4 contestants in a recent beauty contest. Now, for reasons which will become very clear, we're going to use first names only. Would you please introduce yourselves?
Misty, Vicky,
Sonia,
Simone,
Misty, what do you do?
bank teller,
And Vicky?
cosmetician,
Sonia?
hairdresser.
window display.
Now, let me ask you this, Vicky. When you go to business, do you dress in a dress like that or a skirt and sweater? What do you usually wear?
I usually wear a white shirt, tie, sports jacket.
Are those your own eyelashes?
No.
And Sonia, is that your own hair?
No.
That's a very lovely dress, too, that you're wearing, Simone. Where did you buy it?
Oh, I made it myself.
Ladies and gentlemen, the reason for using first names only for these very, very charming contestants is that right now, each one of them is breaking the law. The contest in which they were runners-up was a masquerade. Actually, in the vernacular, it's called a drag ball. You see, each of our contestants is a man. In just a moment, we'll be back to talk to them individually.
Oh, the dancing, bro.
That was so fun. That was so fun. I love watching people dance because it's just so different and it changes, and how we exist is just like, I don't know. I love it. 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 Key membership for 30 months says you're currently in the lead for my most consistent content creator. Everyone else I would have outgrown by now, but you're too fast to catch. Okay. Thank you. I'm so happy to hear that. I really appreciate it. That's so cute. Thank you. Oh, I love the imagery. I love it. And the whole point of this, the whole point of showing you this, the whole point of having this conversation is just to remind us, right? Like, this whole bubble, like, people look at this and think Satan, the devil, murder them, evil, keep kids away from them, don't talk about them. Like, right now, 2026, this is 1967. And in 2026, this administration is consistently and constantly creating fear and reinforcing bigotry about a whole group of people that I and many of you are a part of. It's real and it's happening over and over again, which is why we show up, which is why we deconstruct, which is why we say there are so many ways to have a relationship with existence. Okay? Chad said stuff like this makes me emotional. Me too. I think that's the key difference. When I watch stuff like this, I usually get like really like, oh my God. And that's why I know I'm queer. That's why I know I'm gay. Like, that's why. Because when I watch this, it is such a deeply, I feel so deeply seen and so deeply humanized and so deeply in love with like the experience I get to have on earth. And then I see other people, and you know, it really like, there's two kinds of people that it's like very devastating. The people that are not in the community but see it as like ugly and evil, and the people that could be a part of the community but can't allow themselves to be. Now look, and I'll say this, I have a very specialized set of skills. Okay? Call me taken, if you will. That I am able to have a very similar response to putting myself in people's lived cultural bubbles. So sometimes I can evoke not a deep sense of lived experience, but a deep sense of understanding in a church. Sometimes I can feel very similar to when I'm in the church. And yet it's only when I am free to explore it without the chains attached to the expectation of behavior, because that's what church can feel like. Church can feel like a cage, right? And so when you make it a cage, it just like, I feel crazy being there. It makes me feel like fucking like I'm going to lose my brain and kill myself. But that's how I think a lot of people feel in our similar bubbles, where when they feel forced and it doesn't feel good, they can feel very scared. And that's why I know like we're just animals on a planet to some extent. Because look at this biological experience we're having to a non-threatening situation. I'm not being threatened in a church, but yet the way people talk, it makes me crazy, you know? And yet, if you just let me experience it, if you just let me experience the ritual around a lot of religion, I'm in it. I'm signed up. I'm enjoying it. I love it. But then when you attach this is reality, now convert, now be one of us, now do all these things, then I'm like, oh, you ruined it for me. You just ruined it for me. Okay. So I want to give people a lot of compassion about like why they get so triggered and so afraid of seeing this bubble here in front of us, and why a lot of us feel so like emotionally like, oh my God, I feel so seen. And yet I want them to deconstruct their fear, because their fear is making it impossible for them to enjoy. And yet another part of it is that I think even within our own communities, we have a lot of prescriptions that we make because we feel like we figured it out. And I'm saying, let's deconstruct gender enough to say, I'm not sure we can figure it out, but we might all be experiencing a truth. So like lesbians that are TERFs, I love you, but you're not helping. You know, you're part of the community and we see that you're afraid, but you're not helping. Okay? The L and the T, they go together. Like they're friends, they're sisters, they're, you know, family. And so when you have this like conversation, you have to understand that, right? So when you see TERFs being very anti-trans, and always about trans women, of course, you know, though they are transphobic towards trans men, right? Because they think they're mentally ill women. They don't see they're parroting the same rhetoric that was parroted against them being lesbians, right? So we do have to understand that the outside communities that we think we're so far away from, they still penetrate and infiltrate our sense of self, which again, going back to what Bell Hooks said, right? We're allowed to see ourselves not only through the lens of homophobia or transphobia, but through a lens of liberation that says, I exist as I am, and as I am is good enough, you know? Oh, hold on. Chat, you just reminded me of something. I don't know if this is what you meant. You said, I want to be a drag king queen so bad, but I would miss information to avoid trouble growing up. I wouldn't explicitly lie, but would phrase the truth misleadingly, hence the friend given drag name. Oh, okay. I don't know. This isn't what you were saying, but you know what your comment made me think of? I thought you were going to say, I want to be a drag XYZ, but I don't want to misappropriate drag. Because I was thinking about this idea, this big conversation we've been having about can women do drag, which is so funny, right? Like, why are we even having this conversation in the queer communities? Because gender. But I was thinking about this idea of like, there is a spiritual drag that I think occurs and a costume drag that occurs. And I think about this with all things, which is why people want this binary, are you a woman or are you a man? I don't know, I'm just trying it on for size. Are you a drag, or is drag something spiritual to you, or is it just something you're trying on for size? I don't know. Is BDSM spiritual to you, or is it just something you're doing in the bedroom? I don't know. You know, I think everyone's having a different experience with it. When I did BDSM for all those years, it felt very spiritual to me. It felt very deeply like an identity. Okay. It's less so now. My spiritual practice has taken me in a different direction, which also is that conversation about like deeply rooted, spiritually held beliefs are fluid. And so I think there's something to be said about that. And then there are some times when like you're trying something on for a costume. Like I would see people at the dungeon and I'm like, why are you here? Like, why are you here? You know what I mean? Like, you're obviously just trying it on for a costume, which is so fine, but like, you're not going to get the same thing out of it. And they're like, yeah, I don't feel good here. And I was like, it's not, you're not supposed to be here. And the same way that you ever see a queer person go to church and try to put on the suit and tie and and I'm like, you're wearing a costume. Who is the real you? Right? That's kind of the idea you can think of when you think of like people who are, you know, well, they're maybe trans and they're existing. It feels like not them. And I think these things also exist too, is like, we're having sort of a spiritual relationship with these things that make sense to us, like a deeply held thing. And it's allowed to change and shift as well. You're allowed to do that, right? Chad says, my ace friend had recently become interested in spiritual BDSM. And I was like, I know about that from Brittany's channel. I love that. Yeah, I think that's what's so powerful about existing in the world is like, there's also layers of identity. Why doesn't this thing feel good for me? And what can feel better, but not just like a hedonistic feel. I don't want you to be a hedonist. I want you to be deeply grounded in fulfilling joy, not constantly seeking some sort of fucking happy pill. I'm not trying to feed you a happy pill to make you numb to existence. I'm trying to give you a tool to ground yourself in realizing existence itself is that pill. Like existence itself is that joy. Like not the fact that you exist, but the experience you're having in the most present. So you're not running away from your life and drowning yourself in pills and alcohol and video games. You're enjoying your life in relationship too. And also you might on occasion have a pill or play some video games. You know what I mean? But not as a means of running away, but as a means of grounding. I think about this when I think about the way I do drugs. I was like, oh, yeah, I do drugs to ground myself, not to escape from myself. But a lot of people numb themselves. Oh, have you seen the new administration and all the conservative men are telling people to drink again? Have you noticed that everyone is telling young people to drink again? Dr. Oz just came out with a statement, liquid courage, drink again. And I said, no. No. This is either a deal they're doing with liquor companies or a trick because alcohol sales are way down. But a lot of us know that the drinking culture we used to exist in was escapism. So yes, the benefit of drinking is the socialization, but we don't need alcohol to do it. Isn't it interesting that they said drink more and they didn't say play board games more? They said drink more, but they didn't say go to Comic-Con more. Interesting that they said drink more and go to church more. That is propaganda. Drink more and go to church more. That's your advice to young people? We already tried that. It wasn't working. That's why we stopped doing it, because it wasn't working. Why would we go back to something that wasn't working? This is like a mistake. You know how individually we make mistakes like that? We go back to the thing that wasn't working. As a society, they want us to literally go back to the thing that wasn't working. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that just so it? That's why I say life goes in these cycles. So you as the individual have to accept that the world as a whole is a whole ass person doing that thing. That's why you can't decide who you are based off of this person. That's like you deciding who you are based off your mother or your father, which I know you do. But I'm saying deconstruct that, say no. Saying I love you, yes, because of you I exist. I see you when I look in the mirror. I see you when I have my habits. I talk in a way that's similar to you, but I'm still my own person. Yes, I am a part of you, but I am my own person. And so you are more than just the world you were born into. You're more than just who gave birth to you. And yet you cannot separate yourself from them because you come directly from them, right? It's about a relationship between those two things. Okay, back to the video.
Sonia, you were born a male. When did you first notice these female tendencies?
I was 13 years old.
Sonia, do you take female hormones?
Yes, I do.
And what have they done to you?
They have developed my body, and they also develop my bust and slow the growth of the hair in my body.
You said they've developed your bust. Do you wear brassiere when you work?
No, when I work.
Well, do you ever wear a thin t-shirt?
I wear a shirt or a sweater.
When you wear a sweater, you say that your busts are developed, is it?
They shows through.
Now, what about dates? You have dates with men. Do you ever have dates with men who don't know that you're a man?
Most of the times they don't.
And what do they do when they find out?
Well, they don't really care.
What about your plans for marriage?
Well, first of all, I intend to have my sex change.
How are you going to do that?
I'll take a trip and certain amount of money and surgery. You go through surgery.
That's very expensive, I understand.
Well, it's a couple of $1,000s.
What about your wardrobe? That must cost a lot of money.
Well, my whole salary goes to my wardrobe.
Do you make any of your own clothes?
Sometimes.
All right, let's talk for just a moment about your sex life. Have you ever had a date with a girl?
No.
When you have a date with your boyfriends, what do you do?
I just checked a really quick Google search for inflation. $2,000 in 1967 today would be almost $20,000 for the operation, at least by Google's metric.
Go to movies?
We'll go out dancing here and there, everywhere. Eating out, we eat out, go to movies.
How many times must you go out with a boy before you let him kiss you?
Not much. That same night. You crazy?
It should be obvious to you that you don't lead a normal life in terms with which we're familiar. Would you say that you're a happy, fulfilled person?
Well, I'm very happy, but I'm not quite fulfilled until I get my sex change and become a complete woman. Then I'll be happy completely.
Simone, how old are you?
20.
When did you first discover that you were effeminate?
Well, I think we ought to clear up what's feminine and what's gay.
Well, what's the difference?
Well, a gay person is a boy that is attracted to another boy or a girl that's attracted to another girl. And feminine, anybody can be feminine. There's lots of married men that have feminine instincts. They have limp wrists or they walk a little more feminine than the other man.
Now, Simone, you openly admit that you're a homosexual. What do your parents think about this?
Well, I think my parents really don't know. You could say I live a double life. That on weekends I dress up like a girl, and then when I come home on Sunday afternoons or so, I look like a normal boy in the neighborhood. And I think as long as this happens, my parents don't suspect anything. I have girls from work I go out with during the week, and the girls do call the house. So
have you ever had sexual intercourse with a girl?
No. Girls don't attract me sexually. I like girls that are pretty and all. I like to be seen with pretty people. But sexually, girls just turn me off, I'd say.
Do you have any brothers or sisters?
I have an older brother.
Does he know that you're homosexual?
No.
What do you think he'd do if he found out?
Probably kill me.
How old are you?
I'm 20.
Well, then you're old enough to be drafted.
Yes.
Have you been drafted?
No.
What happened?
Oh, I guess I had a horrible experience when they called me down there. I just stood out from the rest of the people. Minus I didn't want to be drafted, so I just added a little more makeup to my face. And they spotted me. I stood out from the crowd.
Were you dressed as a girl?
No, but I had my hair up. It was combed differently than the rest of the boys. And I had a little makeup on my face. And the guards had caught me at the door, and they escorted me up personally to the main place where we had to be seated. From there on, I was just sent to different psychiatrists.
And what did the psychiatrist ask you?
Well, they asked me, am I happy the way I am? And they asked me, do my parents know? And do I want any help from them? And am I happy? And I answered all their questions.
Now, during the week, when you're at work, you say you do go out with girls. When do you go out with boys?
On the weekends, sometimes during the week, I'd take a day off in the evening, and I'd go to a gay bar in the city, and I'd meet people. Maybe I'd go home with a boy. Every time I go out to a bar, I don't intend to have sex or so.
Well, when you meet somebody at a gay bar, this would tell me that he was probably homosexual. Is that true or not?
Yeah, I only go to gay bars.
Well, do you ever go out with straight people?
I do, and we go to straight bars.
You take female hormones.
I started on it.
And what has it done to you?
I put on weight.
How about your brain?
I think this is interesting. So the conversation started off with you're a homosexual, but then also I'm on hormones, and also I dress like a girl, but also, and so the question is like, what's their experience with gender? Are they a boy or are they a girl? Or are they, who knows? Because also the words we're using in this bubble shifted over time. And that's what's so interesting about it, and like having this conversation in this particular way. Now, what's funny is I think this interview feels threatening because who's doing it and how it's being had. But I think if it's queer people having this conversation with each other, it'd feel great. I do. I love asking people, and I love people asking me about hormones and genitals and feelings and what I'm doing and where I'm going. But if it's safe, and the same way that the gendered conversation doesn't feel safe in all avenues, right? And thank you, Chad says, I love your hair today. It's giving elegant fairy. Thank you so much. Honestly, it took me like 4 different hairdos to decide what I wanted today. Speaking of feeling good in my skin, I had my hair 4 different ways today, and I was like, no, I don't like it. When I look in the mirror, I don't feel good, and I don't like it. And then I finally got to this, and I was like, I felt so relieved. I was like, oh, I got it. But I promise you, the way I felt this morning was like, oh no, like I felt so, and that's what we're chasing, right? We're chasing this feeling that when I look in the mirror, okay, I did it. Okay. It's like I scratched an itch and I finally hit the spot. I did it. Right. Thinking about this conversation and having a comfortable conversation. This goes back to the beauty conversation, because beauty is gender. When we had the beauty conversation, feeling so safe in a space with a bunch of people to say like, man, I'm ugly, right? And they're like, yeah, kinda, you're kind of ugly. And it's like, yeah. And like, I love that safe space to say that, but that is not every space. Or going back to the gender fluidity conversation, like, I think about this all the time. This is a safe space for me. And I know I'm in public and I know somebody else could be watching this, but like, if Piers Morgan was like, what's your gender? First of all, I would never be talking to Piers Morgan. That's number one. The second one is if it was Piers Morgan, I would probably, well, God, I just wouldn't talk to him really, but I might answer differently. Or if a YouTuber, let's say I was talking to a YouTuber who's like, I don't know, who's a good YouTuber to use as an example, because they wouldn't be asking me a real question. That's what I'm trying to get at. I almost feel, are you asking me a real question? Or are you asking me a gotcha question? Are you asking me a question to understand me in depth? Or are you asking me a question to say like, yeah, but like, what does that mean? And that's what I think we're all looking for, is where in a space can I answer this question in a way that is so deeply true and honest and real and fulfilling? Diary of the CEO. What does it mean to be Britney? Like what, it's like you're in this interview. And that's why I think like safe spaces are so funny. Like I keep thinking about Chelsea Fagan because not to speak so badly about a woman, but like I keep thinking like I couldn't answer that with Chelsea either. She doesn't feel like a safe space for me. And that's so interesting. Like I am so fascinated at this girl who went from like one of my favorite daily shows to this girl who now feels like She made fun of autistic people. I'm autistic. She only centers around cis women in their conversations, and I'm bored. She's just like, you know what I'm saying? It's fine. It's great. I'm so glad you have a space. But as I'm on this gender deconstruction journey, like, yeah, if cis women are just going to keep talking about cis women and like, it's not even going to be from a queer perspective, like, you know, one more space that was supposed, you know what I mean? This is why I understand why safe spaces are so necessary. And this is why I'm such a fan of them. Because you need a space to say, I'm a lesbian, but I'm dating a man, and have me go, I get it. Or I'm a gay guy and I married a lesbian, we have a baby. I get it. Okay? And I'll do you one more without needing to even put the label of like lavender marriage on it. Or hag. Oh, I love the discourse around hag right now, where some straight cis women are like, don't call me hag. I'm not your fucking hag. And the gay guys are like, but it's a compliment. I love these conversations, but how about I'm just your friend? Or how about in some bubbles, I am your hag, right? But like, I love the idea that like, we get to decide how we want to label our relationship that doesn't necessarily need this thing, you know, attached to it. And it's all about the safety we feel to have those conversations. And so in some ways, I wish the person interviewing, you know, was almost like a person who knew, but also I think it's so brave of these people to have this conversation in 1967 on TV where they just said my brother might kill me. And now this is being documented for UCLA, right? And maybe that's what we're all doing. Maybe that's what every YouTuber's doing, or maybe that's even what I'm doing. Where here I am in a public setting saying, shh, this is my safe space and no one else is watching but us, right? But the reality is like anybody could be watching this right now. But in my head, it's kind of hard to imagine that anybody would be watching my content other than people who would want to be here. But of course, I'm sure some hater somewhere is recording it and is like, I'm going to bring this up later. But yeah, this stream, especially yesterday's stream, so typical. Today feels very sacred for me. Today feels very personal. Today feels very like, you know, queer. Okay.
Oh, they don't start forming for about 2 or 3 weeks, so I couldn't tell you.
When was the first time you went out with a boy?
Well, is this when I was dressed as a boy or as a girl?
Let's say you were dressed as a girl.
Well, it was at a drag ball 2 years ago when I first started going dressed as a girl. And this boy happened to thought I was quite attractive. And he came over to me and started talking and asking me all sorts of questions. And then he asked me to go out after the ball.
So what happened?
Well, we happened to go to a motel where I had dressed that night for the ball. And we started to party.
What do you mean by that?
Well, we both got undressed and he kissed me, I kissed him. We got in bed, pulled the sheets over us. And we started feeling each other.
What happened when he found out you had a
Well, he knew this before, but he wasn't bothered. He was so hot, you know. And boys like to get the other people, especially pretty ones.
Well, how does he do it?
Well, either I'd go beep, listen to that, or he'd, you know,
Where?
me, in my back or my front.
Oh!
Your front?
My
Simone, we've determined that you do, in effect, lead a double life. On the weekends, you dress as a woman. During the week, you hold down a full-time job. Are you happy?
Oh, yes, I am.
What would make you even more happy?
If I'd be able to have a change from man to woman.
What does that involve?
Okay, so she wants to trans woman, I suppose.
First of all, it involves a lot of money. Doctors charge a lot of money for this operation.
Where would you have the operation?
Well, in Casablanca. It starts for about $2,000 and up.
What is the actual surgical procedure?
Oh, it's not castration anymore like they used to do in the olden days, where they'd cut off a man's testicles or so. But nowadays they keep everything on you except they just stick it inside. And this way it's a little better and it's...
When you say a little better, what does it mean? Could
Well,
you have normal sexual
you
relations?
can still have an excitement like you usually do. It might take a little longer, but you still have your excitement. When you're castrated, you have no excitement whatsoever.
Could you have normal sexual relations as a woman?
You could, but you couldn't give birth. That's the only difference.
Would you like to adopt a child?
I don't think I'd want to adopt a child. I think knowing they might be able to change my body, but not my mind. And I'd always have this little comeback in me, knowing that, gee, I was once a boy, and now I have a kid of my own. It wouldn't sound right to me, but I would like to get married.
Simone, you told us earlier that you make a lot of your own dresses.
Love that.
Do you wear anything tight and slinky?
I do at times.
What happens if you're wearing a very tight, slinky satin dress and you see somebody who appeals to you and your maleness becomes apparent?
I try to get rid of it before I put that slinky dress on.
How do you do that?
Oh, there's lots of ways of wearing a heavy-set girdle.
You wear a girdle?
Mm-hmm.
You're a rather tall girl, aren't you?
Yes.
How tall would you say you are?
6 feet.
Well, you're one of the taller drag queens.
The way they talk is so funny. Like I have it at 1.25 speed, but the back and forth, it's like they're playing ping pong. And I'm gonna be so real for you. I think this is how my first date with my partner sounded. I really do. I think this is why people always say my dating me feels like an interrogation. I think this is how I kind of date. Like I'm like, tell me about that. And what kind of porn do you watch? How much do you have in your bank account? Do you have any medical history? Are you on medication? Like I think that's literally how I talk.
Around.
But I'm one of the more beautiful ones too, darling.
Simone, do you know any other boys who dress up like girls who are taller than you are?
Oh, yes. I know when it used to be a truck driver. You ought to see her now. She's about 6'2" and a 48 bust.
Would you say that your business, your work, is the sort of work that attracts homosexuals?
Well, a lot of arty fields.
Wait, is this her not in drag? I'm confused. Who is this?
It's like dancing, singing, and display work, and different fields that are arty attract a lot of homosexuals to work there. And I happen to know my whole crew is gay.
How do you know that?
Well, we all talk about it, and we're so easy to spot anyhow.
Vicky, you say you're engaged. What does your fiancé do?
He's a photographer.
Is he homosexual or is he straight?
No, he's straight, masculine.
Let me ask you this question. If he's masculine, wouldn't it be more normal for him to go out with a girl?
True, but I'm the nearest thing to a girl, and I'm going for a change. And
When you say you're going for a change, you're going to have an operation.
yes.
Now, several of the other people we've been
Okay, yeah, chat is agreeing that it is her. Okay, noted.
you are going to have the operation. Tell me something about it from your standpoint.
Well, it's a step away from loneliness and suicide, because most of the homosexuals and drag queens, they get to a certain age and they don't want to live no more. So I've just about hit that age.
Have you ever felt that you wanted to end your life?
Oh, many times. And I just think about changing to a woman, hoping that would be an escape.
When did you first...
Remember when Dr. K was taken out of context by all the boys on the internet for saying when men commit suicide, it's very logical? I felt that way all my life. It felt like this. Like, I didn't want to kill myself. I don't think that anybody wants to kill themselves until they want chosen death, which are two different things to me. But when the world is set up in a way, when you view yourself only this way, when you can't figure out how to navigate, death feels like an obvious choice, because obviously, right? You're in like so much pain. And that's why we want to harm reduce, because gender related death is way too high, from inter-partner violence to suicide to just not fitting in. And to men feeling bad about themselves, they can't provide, they kill themselves. Women feel like nobody respects them, they have nowhere to go, they kill themselves. Trans, gay, everyone's killing themselves, and it all can come down to gender in a big way. Not all, but a big part of this is gender. And so when we talk about deconstructing gender, we're also doing it because at the end of the day, too many people don't know how to be in the world as they are, and the world needs to wake up to the fact that it's making it harder on people for no reason. Every person. That's why when men talk about, like, what about men killing themselves? Yeah, that's a gender issue. Men's suicide is a gendered issue. But it's interesting that when trans people kill themselves, it's because they're trans. But when men kill themselves, it's not because they're a man. So they'll say, oh, Brittany, trans people are killing themselves because they're suffering from being trans. They should stop being trans. They're suffering from being gay. They should stop being gay. Well, then why are all these men killing themselves? Should they stop being men? Like, if you're really serious about saving the lives of people, then you have to be serious about why they're taking their lives. It is not because they are men or because they're gay or because they're trans. They are suffering in the construct of the world that we keep maintaining. It is not working for us as a whole. And it's certainly not going to help for us as a whole to go back to try something we already knew didn't work. This is 1967, and it's the same conversation we're having now. We don't learn as quickly as we think we do. Humans are great, but we're not that great. So this is why I say introspection, extrospection. This is why I say I don't want you to view yourself through the lens of homophobia, transphobia, through the lens of racism, through the lens of any of these things. You are so much more than people who don't understand you. You are so much more than people who do not understand you. Do you hear yourselves? Do we hear ourselves? We are allowing people who don't even understand us to decide how we feel about ourselves. Okay? we have the right to get to know ourselves, and we have the right to say, I know you don't get me. That's none of my business. Your inability to understand me is none of my business, at least internally. Okay, maybe externally because we have to exist in the world together. Okay, but internally, none of my business. But that takes time. The same way it takes time to deconstruct your relationship with your bigoted parents. But it takes time. So be patient. Do it when you're ready, but also do it now. Okay? Don't worry about it. Not a big deal. Do it when you can, but do it now. Okay?
Feel that you were not part of the world around you.
Oh, 14, 15.
Had you been effeminate in school?
Yes, I was an outsider.
Were you the butt of jokes and barbs from the other children?
Yes.
What would they say?
There goes the
Barb's mentioned. Just kidding.
the fairy. There goes little Miss Wonder.
And this upset you?
Yes.
Was there anybody in those early days that you could talk to and tell about how you felt?
No, not until just about a year ago. I met people like me. I thought I was the only one. And it's a little easier now.
How did you meet these other people who were like you?
At parties, at balls, drag balls, fairs.
In those early days, would you try to dress up as a woman?
Yes.
I'm talking about when you were 14 and 15.
Yes, I would put on my mother's clothes, run around the house in her heels.
Did she ever catch you?
No.
When was your first home?
All these kids, you see those TikToks of the moms being like, and you don't wear makeup because why? And it's a little boy going, because makeup's only for girls. Right? You see those TikToks? And then these parents say, like, we're not brainwashing our kids to be a certain way. They are just this way naturally. Then why would you have to lecture your kid about who gets to wear makeup? If you're letting kids be kids and kids are naturally gravitating towards nail polish and makeup, and you have to tell them boys don't wear those things, then how is that natural? Make it make sense. You know what I mean? Make it make sense, girls.
Homosexual experience.
When I was 15.
And how did that happen?
In a movie, some fella kept on staring at me and staring at me. I seen the picture once, I seen it twice, and I just stood there most of the night, and he was still there, moving slowly but surely next to me. And then the knee started rubbing his knee. I said, and I just...
Was he young or old?
No, he was young.
And where did you go with him?
Well, actually, I got panicked, and he had told me to come into the men's room, and I told him, all right. And when he went into the men's room, I looked up at the clock, and I said, I gotta get out of here. And I just left. I left them, so that ended that scene.
Well, what was the next time?
Near the rides where I was, they have an amusement park. Some fella, I could just feel the eyes piercing through me. And I turned around, he told me if I like to go on some rides. I told him, I don't mind. We went on a few rides. And
it is interesting, dating culture and how things happen. And I think people think like gay people naturally want to do hookup culture. I think like hookup culture is interesting, but it's not that far off from like cisgender dating and the binary, because like men approach women. Now we're getting these podcasts about how hard it is for men to approach women because of Me Too. But the truth is, like, we've all just been doing dating wrong. I really think like none of our communities are very good at it. Like, I don't think our communities allow for people to have options in different ways because there's all these stereotypes and we keep living up to these stereotypes, but also the stereotypes reflect some category of person. But I think like if you have to settle for only meeting people in bathrooms, you will meet people in bathrooms, but then, you know, that doesn't have to be the only option. And I think this stereotype that queer people meet in bathrooms or gay and trans or gay men in particular, like that is the condition of the society that limits the options for other opportunities. And the same way that, you know, 20 years ago, meeting on a dead app. Wow, Brittany, meeting on a dating app was crazy. Now it's just like expected. You know, that's how culture shifts and changes so quickly. And it's why we have to pay attention to the fact that it can shift and change, which means we can do something different. The fact that Chelsea Fagan lied to her French mother-in-law about how she met her partner because she thought it was embarrassing. So she told them they met at a Starbucks. And she's a cis woman who married a man. And they can't even be honest about how they met because it's cringy, let alone how we're meeting or other people are meeting. And it's like, that's why I don't shy away from like how I meet people. Nope. That's like, you can make it sound weird if you want, but like meeting online, meeting through comment sections, meeting on Discords, meeting online, meeting at Comic-Con, Yeah. Like, why wouldn't I end up meeting people in the place I'm hanging out in? That makes total sense to me. Meeting at work, you know? Yeah. Meeting at church, meeting wherever you are regularly. Meeting at a coffee shop, running into people, right? That makes sense to me.
Then he told me if we'd like to go into the boardwalk. So I said to myself, well, I'm going to see what happens. Being that I ran out last time out of the movies, I'm going to see the next few steps, what happens with another man.
What did happen?
A few things that I guess a girl would do with a fella.
Did he kiss you?
Yes.
Did he touch you?
Yes.
Did you touch him?
Okay, relax there, buddy. Okay. You're asking a lot of questions.
Yes, not right away.
Did he ask you to do things which went against your principles and feelings?
Yes.
Did you do them?
No.
When did you finally go all out
I wonder where she is too. Chat's like, I wonder where she is. I wonder where she is too.
with a man?
About 2 weeks later.
Was it the same man?
Yes, I met him he told me to meet him in New York.
Was he homosexual?
Yes.
Was he an overt homosexual, or was he married and with children?
Well, he had a wife and a daughter, but he was separated from them.
Did you feel happy after having had an experience with him?
Not really, because I felt dirty. I felt like I was trapped in between something that I didn't know what to do about. Either go all the way and try to change. I felt different. I didn't like him after that. I despised him. As a matter of fact, I lived with him for about 9 months. And I despised him every day. But I just did it because I was getting deeper involved, and I just had nothing else to do, so I just let it go.
Did you feel that he
Oh, interesting. Wow. We've all been there, girlfriend.
was responsible in measure for your turning into a complete homosexual?
Well, yes. But he didn't like me to be very obvious.
Wait, what?
Did
Rewind
you feel
that?
that he was responsible in measure for your turning into a complete homosexual?
Well, yes. But he didn't like me to be very obvious.
Were you passive or active in the relationship?
Well, it was sort of a funny deal.
It was a mutual.
Yes.
And now, Vicky, would you tell us about a normal day
Interesting. So many things to deconstruct, huh? So many things to introspect on. God knows everybody needs therapy.
in your life? A day during which you conform to society.
Actually, I'm living in two worlds, the female and the male world. As much as I favor the female world, because of a narrow-minded society, I have to conform to conventions. So on my working days, I get dressed as a man because that's what society likes to see, and I do need the money for my operation. So I play the part of a male. But believe me, I don't like it one bit, because I feel like an imposter. It's a good thing for me I live within walking distance from my job. So every morning when I walk to work, I stop and I
Girl.
see girls and I envy them, not because I like them physically, but I admire them for certain things that they're free to do what they like.
Yeah, Chad said, is that her dressed as a man? Yeah, that's her trying to be a man. Like, okay, I'm not laughing. I think it's just, you know, like, girl, you know. And that's what I love about existing in the world. Like, people always say, like, oh, I can always tell. Can you tell that's a woman? Because it doesn't look like a man to me. And, like, that's the thing is, like, nothing about her is giving man right now. So I'm like, is this you as a guy? But then, like, that's what's funny. Like, that's what's so cool about, like, gender and, like, having a relationship with this idea of, like, oh, I can always tell what people's gender is. I don't know, bro. Like, it's so, because they'll say, like, oh, you're going back to who you really are. Like, God made you a man. I think God might have got his potions mixed up because I don't even think, I don't know. That looks like a lesbian to me if I ever saw one in my life. I don't know.
Me, I have to hide, and I
Actually, it looks like a bisexual queen, really.
don't feel very right. It's not a normal thing to feel, but that's the way I am. I love to look at windows, especially lingerie windows. I love to see the pretty silks and satins, things I'll be wearing once I get my sex changed, and I just like the other girls. Beautiful and sexy, then I hope I'll get a chance in life to get the things I really want, instead of...
I mean, damn, I'm like, you know what I mean? Look at her. Like, in what, like, I don't even know who would look at her and think she's a man. But also, like, just because you look at someone and think they're a man, that doesn't mean anything either. That's what's so interesting about the world. Because, like, right, how many people you see in chat come to chat and be like, oh, is Brittany, like, a trans woman? And I'm like, oh, that's an interesting question. You know how many times I've gotten that in my life? Like, am I a trans woman? Like, that's such an interesting question. They're trying to ask a question based off of like this idea of like what you look like, right? But then you look at her and you're like, in what world does that look like a man? But then what does the man even look like? But I think it's also an energy thing, you know, like just the relationship too. But yeah, and it feels weird. I think this is what makes people, when I say gender is like especially spiritual, but spiritual isn't to negate it. It's to say a deeply embodied, held experience that moves you to a real deep feeling of like knowing. I think that's why faith works. That's why religion feels so good. Is like, sure, but what is it based off of? External, internal. This is an internal experience, right? And I feel like it's so obviously like, she just, yeah, I would, what does it mean to know she's a woman? What does it mean for her to so obviously be a woman? What does that even mean? Yeah.
Hide from society in men's clothes. And just to see these things make me tingle, and I know it would make men tingle too, and to see them on me, and especially if I was a woman. Well, it's getting late. I better get to work and get this out of my head now.
Girl, I'm not even gonna play, bro. Like, even this idea of like, what is a woman, even from behind, respectfully, I was just like, I would clock that as like female. I'd be like, I'm clocking it. But also, what does that even mean? Again, this goes back to that time I was in the drive-thru and I was like, that's a woman I'm talking to. And, you know, my homie in the car was like, how do you know their gender? I was like, I can just tell. I'm not always right, but I feel like I can tell sometimes, you know?
Oh, brother, I have a customer waiting for me. That's what I get for looking in the windows. Dreams, that's all they are.
Oh, are they a hairstylist? Does she does hair? I love that.
Oh, well, maybe just job.
I love that. She does hair.
Help me get this money for this operation. Then I'll be sitting in a chair and someone will be waiting on me in my hair.
Thank you, Vic. Ladies and gentlemen, during our 6-month research project, we interviewed literally thousands of homosexuals. We ran the gamut.
See how they keep calling them homosexuals. Isn't that interesting? They keep referencing them as homosexuals, which, you know, okay, safe space. Yes, everybody hold hand. No. Yes, safe space. Yes, safe space. Okay, let's talk about it. Okay. There is a safe space of queer gender expression and or relationship structures in which it makes a lot of sense to reference them as homosexuals who are also trans women. Because I know without oversharing, I know in my own life, in relation to myself, it's like, this is what I mean by it being like a place and time. It's like, I'm all the things. I am a homosexual and I'm a whatever, and I'm a whatever, and I'm whatever. I'm not literally, but I'm using term, like I understand the idea of being a gay man who's a trans woman. Like, I kind of get it. Like, I don't know how to explain it. It's like, have you ever heard trans women talking and they call themselves the F word? I get that. Like, I deeply understand what is happening. And like, that is very hard to explain to a binary world. That's like, so which one are you? And it's like, oh, but also the world might call her a homosexual as a way to disregard her trans experience or the fact that she's a woman. But in queer communities, in a very specifically deconstructed gendered bubble, there is like a, yeah, of course I'm a woman, but of course I'm a man. But also, am I a husband? But also, am I a wife? You know, these words are really, really personal, you know? Like, they're very real, though. They're like real, but they're real in the sense that they're a representation of the moment in time you're existing in. And that's what the fluidity can get confusing for people, because they're like, I am this and I'm always going to be this. Valid. But also, that's why people go, you can't just be different things every 2 seconds. Well, I don't want to be that girl, but actually, yeah, some of us are having that experience where it feels like every second, it's like a different version. It's like ADHD for gender. You know, like ADHD, it's like, oh, I do this hobby and I do this hobby and I do this hobby and I do this hobby. It's like, oh, which one are you? Which hobby are you defined by? All of my hobbies? Okay, which gender are you identified by? All of them? You know?
Those who betrayed not the slightest trace of the feminine qualities to those like Vicky, who but for a quirk of fate had been born a woman. We know that homosexuality is like Vicky, who but for a quirk of fate had been born a woman. The feminine qualities to those like Vicky, who but for a quirk of fate
Who but for a quirk of faith were born a woman?
had been born a woman. We know that homosexuality is a psychological aberration to be treated by a competent psychiatrist.
He said, go to the doctor.
That homosexuality is a psychological aberration
Oh, fate, not faith. Okay.
to be treated by a competent psychiatrist. But what of those like Vicky who don't want to be treated, who want to be women? Are we to judge?
Are we to judge? Great question, UCLA. Thank you for that. Very educational. Okay. Okay, girls. Let's take a break. We'll come back. We're just getting started. For the record, let me just show you. Do you see all those tabs that are open? Yeah, we're going to be here for a while.